All right. Hi, everyone. So, if you are catching me for the first time, my name is Taylor. I am the host of Overcoming the Podcast, and this is where you've stumbled upon. Today, I wanted to come on with a bonus episode because I have been going through a lot. And I know that this is something that happens in transition for a lot of people when they're healing and growing. This message needed to come out so much. Like, I woke up, I didn't even brush my hair, I didn't put on my makeup, and I'm pretty sure my dog's behind me and you might hear him snoring, but it's just so heavy on my mind, and I know that there are people who need to hear this message, so I'm just sharing today. So thank you for your patience with as raw and messy and stumbly as this may be. It's just it's been a heavy few months, but also probably one of the most significant chunks of periods in my life, if not the most significant as far as transformation goes. And so the topic that I want to speak with you all about is the breakdown before the breakthrough. And I'll give you a little synopsis of what happened in my life and then kind of some of the lessons that I've learned through this. So if you didn't catch the episode 2 about me, definitely go back and listen to that, maybe after this episode. um, I have been through a lot. And my biggest source of trauma that kept me small was growing up and dealing with emotional abuse. Okay. I was psychologically manipulated so that my reality was questioned. I didn't trust myself. I didn't believe myself. I didn't like myself. I was told every day by my abuser that I was worthless, ugly, fat, couldn't amount to anything in the world, all of those things. And that had a significant blow on my self esteem. And so now, when I find myself making changes or doing things differently than society would expect, I get this imposter syndrome and this like deep sense of I'm going to fail or I'm doing things wrong or I can't make this happen, whatever it may be. Well, the past year has actually been a huge period of transformation for me. I started around this time last year, actually had recently moved in with my then boyfriend, who I had met when I was 16, which I look back now and there was a heavy amount of trauma going on in my life at that time. And he was someone who was in my life consistently since then, and I considered him one of my best friends. And recently we decided to try it. I finally decided to give him a chance after healing and recognized I always had feelings for him and move forward in a relationship. And in my mind, that got serious because we've known each other for so long. And I thought he was on the same page, but I don't think he was ready for me as I was ready for him. Um, and so what happened in that is that both of us, while there's this deep care and respect for each other, one, I think we were incompatible on a romantic side of things, just like what we needed, our energy levels, that kind of thing. But also our relationship triggered wounds in each other that we hadn't experienced in a long time because the intensity of the relationship and what we expected out of each other and the steps we were taking in life was different than what we'd experienced with other people, on top of having another deep friendship with this person. It's like a complete role shift and transformation. And so it makes sense to me, at least, that there would be triggers and things that are going to work through because relationships are like mirrors and it helps us to understand a lot of the wounds that we have in our early family life because that's how we see romantic relationships expressed or close intimate relationships in general. And so what we see or what we were like with our patterns with our parents growing up can tend to translate onto the patterns with our partners. So I was dealing with stuff there, he was dealing with stuff. I don't think he was ready to face it in the way that I was, and even though we triggered each other, it was to the point where we couldn't make it work anymore. And so I asked him to leave after some bigger things happened, and not only lost my boyfriend and someone who I deeply cared about, who I saw as the rest of my life, but I also lost one of my best friends who had been that core core person and support and safe space for me for a long time in the most chaos that I had been through and through the abuse and everything, seeing me clearly, seeing things clearly. One of my safest people wasn't safe to me anymore. And that was hard. And I don't think either of us intended it to be that way, but that's what happened. And so I was recovering from that. And I got deeper into my spirituality. I went through what's called a spiritual awakening, where I started seeing things deeper. I started getting deeper into myself, questioning things. Who am I? Why am I here? That kind of thing, like into the deep purpose. And I recognized more of my spiritual intuitive gifts. I recognized that I was holding myself back in creating my business. I recognized so many things. And I just was trying to find my place in the world. So, like, that kind of drove me to things like, discovering manifestation and journaling and shadow work. And, I did something after I broke up with him in June, which I called Healing Girl Summer, which I gave myself a task every day to help heal myself through this, not only the relationship that I lost with him, but the triggers and the things that came up in me that I recognized that needed healing. And I went on solo road trips, and then I went to go connect with friends. I went to see the ocean, which is like my happy healing place. Like, I did a lot of things for me, because in my relationship, I did lose parts of me, which I feel like happens to a lot of people. But I sacrificed pieces of me in my life to put that relationship first. And so I was kind of rebuilding myself in my life. Well, I felt like I got to a point where I was stable emotionally and getting my routine back. I started going to Pilates again, which was something that really helped me, and something that I stopped during our relationship for financial reasons. And, I was just feeling good. I was losing weight. I was starting to get this routine. But then I recognized that I wasn't happy in my job, just wasn't happy. I had cycles prior where I had gone full time and burnt out, full time and burnt out. And I had only been in this career for 2 years at this point, a little over 2 years. And so there was this guilt with this. And, I was in a pandemic. I was working with kids in healthcare rehab setting. And it just, the one-to-one and all the paperwork and stuff, it was just burning me out. So I decided to go back part-time, because what I was making, I could support myself financially on part-time and then continue to build my business. Well, I found myself starting to build the business, but I was also finding blocks. I was talking to my therapist saying that, like, I was so afraid of what people were going to say, or I had all these ideas in my head and I just couldn't create it. I couldn't do it. And, I found myself, the more I got into my spiritual practices, and like I started doing things like moon water, if you're familiar. It's one of those things that sounds really weird, but for me, it's actually not super scary. It's just really setting intentions and drinking water, basically. But I just started visualizing what I wanted my future to be, how I wanted my future self to act. And with that, I got to this, like, I felt like I had a really good connection with the universe. Again, I'm a spiritual person, whatever you believe, but I felt that I had a really good connection with the energies around me after I'd been healing, getting deeper into myself, figuring out more of my purpose. I was hearing more of my intuition again, like really powerful stuff. And I remember I was in this pivotal place where I was feeling frustrated with my job, but I was afraid financially to make the shift because, I was where I was. Um, and then after probably about 2 months of wrestling with this, I made the decision to put in notice at my job. And it was then I kind of, I said something. I was like, all right, universe, please remove anything in my life that does not serve me and where I need to be to achieve my purpose. Because at this point, I knew my purpose was helping survivors in my business and all of that stuff. And I was talking to people, different entrepreneurs, and they're telling, just quit, just go all in, just whatever. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I can. I don't, and all these doubts and all these fears. And long story short, I ended up putting in the notice at my job. I gave them over a month's notice because I was like, just so you know, I felt like intuitively I needed to be free by Thanksgiving. And I gave them notice in, I believe it was mid-October. And then that next weekend, after I had asked for the universe to remove anything that didn't serve me, I felt this energy shift, and it's like something I can't describe. But essentially my roommate was my roommate at the time was dog sitting, so she was gone for the weekend. And there was just some weird energy. And at one point, my dog was in the house and was like obsessive. Like there was almost like a toy was stuck under the couch, obsessive for 24 hours about something under the stove. And I was like, it's probably just, we had roaches at that point. Like you probably saw a roach go under there, whatever. And so basically, when my roommate came home, and on her way home, she texted me. She was like, "Hey, so I need to let you know that financially, I need to move out. I can't do this anymore. I'll try and find you someone, but I need to move out." And I was like, oh, okay. Um, and so my head was spinning, and I went into survival mode. And if you know anything about, if you listen to the relationships episode on the You Awakening, you know that part of the thing for me was the finances after my relationship, and I felt financially unstable. And I just got to a point where I was feeling financially secure again, and had a roommate and felt comfortable with her, and things were going well. And then just only a couple months later, she's like, "Yeah, I can't stay." So that was a shock to my nervous system. And I was processing that. And I basically told her, I was just like, I need a minute to process. She came home about an hour later. We started talking about things, and I told her about my dog who had found, was playing with something under the oven, and I just told him to ignore it, whatever. And I hadn't looked under there. I was just like, I don't want to deal with it. She screamed, said it's a rat. It was a dead rat. Um, that was fun. There'd already been a lot of things that had gone wrong with that house. And so there was a dead rat. And then an hour later, there was someone coming to fix the dishwasher that wasn't working, and they refused to fix it because they said there were rats living back there and they had chewed through the plastic. And then when they came back the next day, I mean, so that felt like a sign, like, okay, I need to get out of here. Like this, I don't need to be here anymore. And then I remembered that I asked the universe to remove anything that didn't serve me. And I was like, but I'm in a lease. Like what? Um, and so I was like, all right, well, I feel like this is a sign. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea where to go. I just put in this notice at my job, and now I'm like, what? And so at this point, I'm thinking, okay, well, I can give a 30-day notice and go from there. That whole week, I'd been having really heavy headaches, and to the point where I had to call out of work a couple of days because I couldn't function, like really bad. And they didn't go away with medicine. They didn't go away with time or rest like they normally did. And I didn't understand. Well, when the dishwasher guy ended up gotten talked into coming back the next day, he found some black mold under the sink, found a leak under the sink that was separate from the dishwasher, and there was black mold there. And I have an autoimmune condition, and that's really, I mean, black mold is nothing to mess with anyways, but it's really not okay. And I recognize that that's probably where my headaches were coming from. At the same time, that same week, I got a message from my naturopath that said that my autoimmune numbers were getting worse, and she was concerned and wanted to know if anything had changed in my life. So my health is declining, my house is falling apart, my roommate can't stay anyways, and instantly I had to make a decision. So the kicker for me was my health. I cannot stay in a place that's unhealthy. My landlord was not going to fix it. He wouldn't send someone out professionally to even check if it was actually mold. It totally was. And didn't fix anything, just told him to spray bleach on it and it'd be fine. The guy who was there even said he wasn't comfortable doing it, but he was told to do it anyway. The rat guy told me that this has been a known problem, that my landlord was covering stuff up, like all kinds of stuff. And it was just very clear that it needed to be done. And at first, my landlord, when I just found the rats and I talked to him, he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll let you out of your lease. I'm sorry that happened, blah, blah, blah. Just give you 30 days. But then the day after, when I found the black mold and he wouldn't fix it, I immediately had to leave for my health. And he basically said, he's not giving me my deposit back. I broke the lease. I'm being negligent, blah, blah, blah. I had to get out of there, and I knew I did. And I lost thousands of dollars in that. And I know that. And I know I had so much proof that I could have won legally, but he was threatening other stuff. And I just didn't want to get caught in that battle. So we are now I had just gotten over my relationship, and I also had earlier that year cut off my family completely for the first time. I'd been no contact with my family. I had cut off one of the most significant relationships in my life, probably the most significant looking back. And I was just getting myself stable again, was going to quit to go all in, to go all in on my career that you're seeing here now. And start making money off that. A very stable career, by the way, like as an occupational therapist with a doctorate, I was making some good money. But again, I knew that wasn't my end all be all. And right after I had just put in my notice, I was just planning to DoorDash and babysit and things that I could easily support myself on my rent and have the space in, the office to start recording the stuff I need and do the courses and all of that. Now my house, I had to move out immediately. So within 24 hours, I was packing stuff. I gave so much stuff away. I threw stuff in storage units. I had people come help me move as fast as possible, and I got out. But with the housing market the way it was, and the fact that I was just quitting my job, and the fact that I was already just barely recovering from the finances that had been depleted when I was in my relationship, was part of our issues. I I was just like, I don't know where to go. And I started couch hopping. I had 2 suitcases with me, and I didn't have a place for my dog. So then at the same time, I reached out to my mom, and that's not something that I was necessarily comfortable with, but I did not want my dog to be homeless, and I knew he would be comfortable there. And I had people who could take me, but they couldn't take my dog too because they didn't have the space. So I asked my mom if she would take them, and she said she would take my dog. And I was like, okay, well, I want the boundary still set. I don't want to tell you what's going on. I just need you to take him. She's like, okay. So she was respecting boundaries at this point, and I felt okay with that. And so while I was finishing up my job, because I still had a few weeks left, I was on one person's couch for a couple weeks who was a friend. And then I went to another friend who I knew through work, and I was in her like casita in their backyard. So it was, there were small spaces. There were places to lay my head. They were not places to settle in. And so during that time, I found myself wanting to make myself as small as possible and not take up space because I felt like an inconvenience. And I also financially was unable to contribute like I wanted to be able to. Like I was in a rough spot. And also, though, this was by my own choosing to walk away from my job. And at any point, I could have gone back to my job and been like, you know what? Hey, I need to stay. And I'm sure they would have kept me. I'm sure of it. But intuitively, I knew that I needed to quit my job and that I needed to go all in on my purpose. And that's the only way that I could make this happen. And everyone thought that I was insane and making bad decisions. But all I could say was that my intuition was saying to do this, regardless of everything falling around me, that I needed to do this. So I stuck with it. I was like, the universe has a plan for me. I'm going to make this work. And so I quit, my job ended up quitting. They ended up finding someone earlier than I was expecting to move. So again, another $1,000 or $2,000 that I was down that I was expecting to have. And a dear friend of mine who lived on the other side of the country basically said that, she would take care of me and give me a place to go and had a room. And I just needed to get on an airplane, and she would help me out for a couple months. And the trick was, I wasn't, we were in a pandemic. It wasn't really a trick, but the boundary we set was that, we were in a pandemic and not to go out with other people. And instead of doing anything in-person work, the time is set for you to be online and build your business. And I was like, okay. And honestly, this is what I needed. I needed the space to be forced to set up things the way I needed to. Like at this point, I had just barely set up my LLC. And I was like, okay, I do that. So I literally get on a plane, drop my dog at my mom's after I had been couch hopping in Arizona while I'm finishing up my work, using other people's showers, going from having like a 4-bedroom house to myself to now this tiny little space in someone's house, and afraid to take up fridge space even. And so I was at this point eating Taco Bell burritos 2 a day, or, you know, 2 of the dollar bean burritos. I would get maybe 2 or 3 a day, and that's all I would eat all day because I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, well, it fills me up, but it's cheap. It's fast food, but I also like I know I can like do that without taking up space in people's fridges or whatever. So I felt okay with that. Um, coming off a period where before I had been working out, eating healthy, like I was like feeling confident in my body again. So I completely lost that health routine. And also I was undernourishing myself in survival mode. I was just eating to survive. I was not even thinking about other stuff. It was just, I need to just not be hungry. So that was a trigger that came up. And I remember that during this time, you know, the person who I went to stay with is another one of my safest people. Like if anyone, it's the type of person where one, we connected instantly and it feels like a soul bond. And I can be anything. I can show up as whoever I am, however I'm feeling. I know there's no judgment. I know that she sees me for me. And like it's an authentic support and comfort. Like I'm telling you, I am so comfortable around her. Okay. And it's exactly what I needed. And again, at this point, there was at any point I could have gone back to my mom's house and been like, I just need a place to stay. But at the time, I told myself I would rather be on the streets than do that. Um, and you know, it just because for my mental health last time, it was just really not okay. And I cut them off for reasons and I was doing better. And I did not want to put myself back in that situation. So, anyways, get on the plane, go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, stay there for a couple months, end up launching my business, end up, you know, doing all of those things. But the first week I was there, I found a core wound that I didn't realize I had, that if I was not contributing to something, I did not deserve to take up space. And when I'm saying take up space, I mean even get my basic needs met. That there was stuff in my childhood that I wasn't allowed to eat certain foods. I wasn't allowed to sit in certain chairs. Like I had to earn everything I did. And even so, there were some things that I just was not allowed to do. So because I didn't feel like it was my space, and especially because I financially was not contributing, they were taking care of me. And like I had always told myself I will pay them when I can. You know, that was my way of getting through. They would make dinner for me and ask me if I wanted more. And I would say no. And I would go to bed hungry and like cry myself to sleep and try and make myself as small as possible, not allow myself to make even the tiniest mess in the bathroom, clean up everything behind me. Like I was walking on eggshells and no one told me to. Like, again, this is the safest person that I could possibly be around. And so after I'd been there a couple days, I texted my friend and I was like, I know this sounds childish and hard and weird, but I just want you to know that like I'm afraid to eat. I'm afraid to take up any space or receive anything you're offering me because I don't feel worthy of it. And I feel like I'm a charity case and I am just going to, you know, you're going to end up resenting me. And even though we had conversations about, are you super sure? You know, what are the limits here? What are the boundaries? Like really powerful conversations. And we had limits going in. And this was a very genuine, I believe this. I didn't believe that I deserved to get my needs met. And it it's hard. I'm starting to tear up now that in these transitions, when everything is stripped from you. So like at this point, I literally like the location that I had always known. I went to an unknown location. I had been hopping around on couches with suitcases. I had to immediately leave and hadn't really processed that. You know, and earlier had cut off my mom, and earlier in the year had ended a serious relationship. And now this. And while I was trusting my intuition and I knew I was handling it better and I wasn't like spiraling and panicking, and I was proud of how I was handling things, I recognized in other ways that I was shutting down, that I was reverting to my childlike self, stuck in deep abuse and being controlled and manipulated, even around the safest people, even around people who loved me and wanted to support me. And the guilt and shame I felt for still following my intuition when I could easily just step back into stability and get a job with my OT degree, and this could all go away. I could get a house really easily. I could, and qualify by myself working full time as an OT, but I already knew that burnt me out. And even part time, I didn't want to be there anymore because I knew I was meant to help people understand trauma and trauma programming. And I saw the dysfunction in the schools I was in, and professionals need more training and the things that I'm capable of doing. But I felt such guilt for not doing what society would have wanted me to do. What the looks of people when I would say, oh yeah, I'm just moving here real fast. Oh, okay, big change, deer in the headlights, judgment. I had at any point I could have stopped it. And so the fact that I didn't, but I had people who believed in me. My friend who literally in Pennsylvania was to help me start my business, knowing the stuff that I'd been through in my relationship and how hard that was for me, and still recovering from that emotionally. As far as like getting my life back together, emotionally, I had gone over most of the stuff and I had done most of the grieving and that kind of thing. But wanting to help because a genuine caring person. And so I found myself stuck on social media with the same 1,600 followers I'd had for that past year, that, I found myself not knowing what to share. I found myself burnt out when I wanted to create content. And so I immediately wanted to produce when I get there. I wanted to give something of value and I couldn't. And so I started recording. And I was like, what to do when you can't get out of bed? I mean, I was sleeping on an air mattress. I've been on my own since I was 18 years old. And there was such a deep shame that hit that at nearly 29 years old, I was starting over like a charity case in life. That I'm supposed to be known as the successful one, the smart one, and I had started over, essentially. And I was relying on other people to even get my basic needs met. And I didn't feel worthy of getting those basic needs met. And so I started sharing. And there was one video that I recorded that I turned into a reel that I put on, my stand and my tripod there. And I press record and I got back to the bed, and it was supposed to be, what to do when you just can't, when you can barely get out of bed. What do you do? And it turned into this video of me trying to journal, and then just heavy sobbing, trying to convince myself I wasn't crazy, and like narrating this stuff in the video. And I was just like, this is all I have to give right now. This is all I have to give. And I think at this point I had started gaining some traction on social media, but I didn't feel worthy of it. And so I just showed up where I was, and I was like, this is it. And that video went viral. And within 3 days, I gained 1,000 followers. And then more videos started going viral and more things. And at this point, I had just barely launched my coaching. And even, I had this holiday webinar that I was going to share for people how to get through the holidays. And I think it was launched a little bit too close to the holidays. And I'd put everything on the line to start my business that I intuitively knew was going to be so successful. And no one signed up. And so again, another trigger of, I can't do this. What did I just do? I just threw my life away for something that's not working. And then I launched my coaching, and at first no one signed up. There was a bunch of, ooh, maybe. And then no. And again, I was like, I'm not worthy of this. People don't see any value in this. What am I doing? I can't actually do this. And so all of those big triggers came up from my childhood of, I'm never going to amount to anything in life. And especially professionally, I'm not worthy. And the feeling of regret, of shame, of guilt, and it's like, regret was there, but in a way that I still knew this was the path I needed to be on. But again, it's like, it didn't make sense based on what I was intuitively feeling, that how could this not be successful right away? like it just felt like it was going to be like oh, this is it. And I'm very in tune with my intuition. Like somehow I knew that I had to quit my job by Thanksgiving. And right before Thanksgiving, my house fell apart and I moved to go to a whole nother state to stay with my friend. I knew something was changing. And I even had an intuitive message that I was moving. And I was like, no, that's weird. That doesn't make sense. I'm not moving. Like I was doubtful of it, but I heard and I knew that I was moving, but it didn't make sense. So I didn't accept it. Anyways, so my intuition has been strong. Okay. And when things were not working, even more triggers hit. It's because of me. I'm not enough to get people to care or invest, or I don't have the skills, or I don't have the experience, or all of those things that just came out. And so I took a step back and I started working on things, and I started journaling, and I started going back into like shadow work and all of this stuff. So then I got my first coaching client, and that was exciting. And I did that. I felt good. I got really good feedback and made that happen. And then I was starting to feel good, and I started to develop more stuff, and I'm working on courses and all kinds of stuff. And I have all these plans, and everything that I've been like waiting for, this framework had come together, like everything. I just needed that creative space to figure it all out. And I did. And I'm still gaining followers, and I'm still gaining people who are like consistent feedback every day. Like, wow, thank you. This is so needed. I've never seen this done before in this way. Like just validation after validation after validation. And I'm feeling so good. And then shortly, another significant relationship that I started when I was around 16, who, again, if you listen to my relationships episode on the You Awakening, was an on again, off again situationship. It was a very unhealthy, toxic relationship that was never actually a romantic defined relationship that was official because he didn't want to. But basically, it was me being obsessed over this guy who treated me like crap, who told me that they didn't want me, who would get close and then get too close and run away and get upset, and we wouldn't talk to each other. But at the same time, felt like I had known him better and he knows me better than anyone. And I was drawn to him. And, there were many things in that relationship, again, situationship, that made me feel worse about myself, but I kept hanging on to it. And he was kind of like my go between any like official relationship that I had. And same with him with me. Like we would just like stop talking, get in a fight, and then one of us would break the silence and reach out. And it'd be like we just picked up where we left off. And then we'd trigger each other or whatever it was. Anyways, it was this like consistent cycle in my life. And right after I got out of my relationship with my ex, I reached out to him, to the situationship guy. I knew it was a mistake at the time. I had gone no contact for a while, but he had randomly reached out to me towards the end of my relationship and asked how I was doing. And I sent him a picture of me happy with this and the dogs and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great. But then I started questioning, like, was that for a reason? Blah, blah, blah. So as I'm unstable, I got into my head and I reached out to this guy. I recognized the mistake. He was pushing boundaries and patterns that I didn't like. And I stopped that. Well, sometime while I was in Pennsylvania, he reached out to me and, said he really wanted to talk and basically told me everything that I've been wanting to hear since I was 16, that it is me, and that he just wants to get married and have kids, and everything that I'd always felt that he'd always said it was not true, and blah, 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 and whatever. And so long story short, there was another significant relationship that was hard for me. And I cut ties with that. I was like, this is not what I want. It's too little too late. And I've outgrown this, and I don't appreciate the way you've treated me. That's not how you treat someone you love, blah, blah, blah. So I told him, no. And I ended up going to see a family member in close nearby in Ohio. And there were more triggers there. There's a place that I had been avoiding. There are people that I had cut off there. But I saw, when I was there, I saw dynamics of my family, and my whole life was framed differently. And again, this huge breakthrough that was deeply triggering and shook my life up. And I recognized the dynamics of abuse within my family, which actually in the next episode, I'm going to talk about. So if you want to hear more about that, and just how deeply ingrained trauma and generational trauma was, and how much I needed to be doing what I was doing. But again, heavy and hard, right? When you realize there's even more abuse than you thought as a kid, there's even more dysfunctional patterns. Like, it was a almost identity crisis. Like, my whole life was blown open. The people who I was told were good were actually harmful and keeping other people away. And it was just heavy and hard. And so then I had that breakthrough. And it's like all of these things happening at once. And as I'm talking right now, I'm even like, gosh, I don't even know if people can follow this, because this is just so much that's happening in a short time. And it's just like one thing after another. I was shedding, I was pushing forward. I was shedding, I was pushing forward. I was getting rid of this relationship. I was making this breakthrough. And at some point, something had to crash. I'd had like the emotional experiences and like some grief and things like that in it, but I just kept going. Because I had to keep going. I was in survival mode consistently. And I started getting more comfortable in the space I was in Pennsylvania and with my friend, and it got better, and I started eating and taking up space. And, I started working through core wounds quickly. Like, things would come up and then I would work through it, because that's all I had time to do was sit there with it. And so I was making significant progress, and was proud of myself, but they just kept coming. Realization after realization after realization. And it's exhausting. But again, just keep moving. Well, when I was in Ohio, COVID was getting worse, and I recognized that I needed to go back to Arizona. And, I didn't want to overstay my welcome with my friend, but also one of my friends reached out to me while towards the tail end of Pennsylvania and was like, I think I have a job for you. And I was like, what? She's like, I think I have a job for you that will get you away from all of this and get you stable again. And I think it's what you need. And I was like, okay. And basically told me that this friend has this center who, with addictions rehab, and is, I told her you were an occupational therapist, and she sounded really interested. And I'm like, oh, that actually, that's more in the trauma vein for me. It's still stable, but it also gives me the ability to explore. And she's like, yeah, she even said like you can like help create programs and stuff in groups. Like, they're just opening up, they're willing to try things. And I'm like, oh, that could be really cool. So that ended up working out. And so the job was in Arizona, where I'm from. And because I didn't have enough stability, my online stuff was starting to come in, but not enough to where I could consistently pay my bills every month. So at this point, I knew it's not fair of me to go back to these people's these couches, because that was already an inconvenience for them, and they were willing to help me out. And instead of panicking on where am I going to go, what am I going to do, I begrudgingly asked my mom if I could move in when I came back until I got back on my feet. And again, another trigger. And I knew how hard this was going to be. But there was a part of me, and this was after I made all of these realizations of how deeply messed up the family is, including my mother. But there was a part of me that had hope that maybe this time together would heal our relationship. There were all these breakthroughs happening in every other area of my life. Why would this not happen? So last day of Ohio, I had a panic attack, and I was sobbing to this family member that I didn't want to go back and lose myself and be in the presence of them and her and how invalidated I've been and how I'm the problem. And it's an abusive, toxic relationship. And I just, it's covert. It is. And, my therapist has helped me discover that my mom is a covert narcissist. And the dysfunctional family dynamics. My brother's the golden child, can do no wrong. I'm the scapegoat, always get in trouble, no matter what. My brother physically had me grabbed my head and had me inches away from the fireplace mantle saying he should bash my head in. And my mom turned around and said, Taylor, why'd you upset him? Like, I didn't. He just, he reacted and he's scary. And I was the problem there and something that big. And so that's just the level of how not supported I am in that environment. And it's just not safe. It's not. But at this point I had nowhere else to go. And so I was like, okay, well, there's got to be a reason for this because I'm an everything happens for a reason person. Right. So here I am panicking. And she's like, I know, I have a feeling that I'm not going to be there that long. Okay. So I ended up staying there probably a little over a month total. My bed never came. It was supposed to. There was all stuff. There's, people fell through with trucks or whatever. I didn't have money to buy movers at the time. And I was like, I feel like this is for a reason. We're just going to let that go. Well, I essentially, the first day, first of all, when I was on the plane, I got all of these signs, like all of these angel numbers that it's going to be challenges ahead, challenges ahead, challenges ahead, challenges ahead, but you're going to be okay. And I'm like, really? Like, I needed to hear this. I'm already freaking out enough, whatever. And, again, shedding so many things, deep core wounds, so many things coming up, lost my job again on purpose, but still job, home, relationships, everything, just been shedding after shedding, realization after realization. And now I'm going back into that toxic household where last time I was there, I lost myself, fell into this deep depression, and it took months to recover. Months. And I also, prior to this, had no contact for 9 months because had cut them off. At this point, by the time I moved in, it had been about 11 months since I hadn't had any contact with them. So I had no idea what was going on with them. But at this point, that's where I needed to go. So I get there and the first day, like the first night, everything seems fine. Normal, how are you? Whatever. Everyone's happy. No one's moody. No one's projecting anything. No one's saying snarky comments. Just feels like people catching up, like old friends catching up. And I was like, okay. And then the next day, my mom had brought up a family member who I did not have contact with and did not want to have contact with, and just brought up something in conversation. And essentially, it was just like, and they did this funny thing, ha, 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 ha. And I just basically said, like, are you just in denial? Because this person is one of the people who I realized the level of toxicity and abuse that they are and always have been. They are a serial abuser known in the family, and it's been outed by a few people and more people who've been whispering and, but not telling people. But it's the same person who keeps everyone separated and isolated and yet abuses people separately and tries to convince everyone else that the other people in the family are crazy. Like it's just a manipulation, abusive thing. Anyways. And so she told me, no, he's never done anything to me. I'm fine. I'm I don't believe anything anyone's saying and whatever. And I tried to explain there's more. I've learned about this. And she's like, nope, I don't want to hear it. That's just not true. And I'm like, okay. And then she brought up something about a conversation that I had with another family member who I had cut off, who was being manipulative and gaslighty, guilt tripping before I left. And I called them out and was like, absolutely not. You don't get to treat me that way. And apparently I made that family member cry, and how dare I? And so that conversation got brought up. And through that, it started with just me and my mom talking, and that, that's not nice. You're nasty. You're judgmental. Therapy has made you worse, blah, blah, blah. And then my brother came in from the other room just saying, yeah, like just like adding on, like, it's just like them just completely ganging up on me. It's not a big deal. If your childhood was so hard, why am I normal? Like, all kinds of stuff. My mom saying that what I'm doing in the online space was not okay and deeply disturbing. And, I'm just looking for attention, and just going on and on and on and on. And even said things as invalidating as I would think trauma is getting the wrong slice of bread on a sandwich that I was ordering. Like, and it was very hard for me because I felt so deeply invalidated. And there was a part of me, again, that had hope that this relationship dynamic could change, that maybe things could be better. And I found out in that conversation that she is in such deep denial, and that's how she's coping. She's literally rewritten history. She told me that her relationship with my dad was not traumatic, that I shouldn't be as traumatized as I am because he was kind of an idiot, but he wasn't abusive, and all these things that just my jaw dropped, and it just invalidated every experience that I've had since the beginning of time in my family. And neither one of them seeing the issues that they had or anyone in the family had. And my brother saying he was normal, just again, after knowing he grabbed me by the skull, and, like a year before that, and said he should bash my skull in for something so small, but has no issues. Anyways, so deeply, deeply invalidating there. And so what I found was I had to just get through and survive. And again, it was the trigger of not taking up space, making myself small. And then there started, as time had progressed, it was like leading into snarky comments. It was the little jabs. It was and it was me just trying not to react, just letting things be how they are, and not get into a fight like we did that first full day. Like, I did not want that the rest of the time. And knowing that I deeply disagreed with them, and, other things came up where I saw that they were miserable people who had such a different perspective than me, and things were skewed. And, even their stance with the pandemic, and just lack of empathy. And I was just seeing so many things that was just deeply distressing to me that I had never seen before. And so I felt stuck. Again, I felt stuck in this place. And then I had even more issues where I had already, because I'd been dealing with this big spiritual awakening, and I've been shedding so many people and not connecting with people as much anymore. I felt like I had lost a lot of my friends, especially in Arizona. I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there, but there was this job for me here that I needed to be there for, and I understood that. But before then, I was ready to go to California, and there was a possibility that when everything was open that I was going to be there. And obviously it didn't work out because I'm in Arizona, but it was very hard for me to feel trapped in this house, to not feel like I could share anything, for them to be completely against everything I did. It just walking on eggshells again. The one time I used someone's groceries, I was told, don't do that. So of course, my, again, survival mechanisms of food and things like getting my basic needs met, I reverted to not relying on anything. And my mom's like, well, you can have this stuff, but you can't have this stuff. But again, I was triggered and went down to, well, I'm just not going to rely on you for anything. So I was very fortunate to file my tax returns early and basically have enough money to get out. And I reached out to someone who was like someone I met in passing at one of these self-development retreats that I went on like a year prior. And I was like, hey, I know this sounds like a junior high kid, but do you want to be friends? I don't have people here anymore. And I am in a space where I could really use people to just be around because the space I'm in is really toxic and hard to get through. And she basically was like, yeah. And long story short with that, it turned into, do you need a place to stay? And I moved in with her, which is kind of cool because that's not what I was intending at all. I just wanted people to talk to who, like-minded. And, when you're growing and especially when you're more spiritual and you're doing a lot of self-development, you start to outgrow things and people, or people start becoming wary of you. And it isn't necessarily anything wrong with either person. It's just that you guys don't connect in the same way you did anymore because one person is changing so much. You know what I mean? That the same things you used to connect over, you don't. And so, yeah. And moved into this place and, quickly found myself comfortable and feeling safe and getting all my stuff unpacked, my stuff, finally sleeping in my own bed, doing all of this stuff. And I decided I was just going to cut contact with my mom. Something really bad happened where she triggered me deeply. And I started getting this rage. And on the last day, and instead of me, I found myself to be at my breaking point where I was going to completely lose myself. And trying to keep her out was too hard. And so I ended up going for a weekend to one of my soul sister best friends in San Diego, then came back that next day and moved in. So like I literally did like a turnaround trip to stay a night for a friend in San Diego and then come right back in the morning and move to a new place. And it was, again, fast transition, big transition, boom, 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 boom. So by the end of all this, I had been in 3 different states. I had been in 5 different locations of where I was sleeping, and none of them were mine, or nor did I have a bed that was mine, or, I was either on a couch or an air mattress or a tiny room or whatever. And so I found myself, when I got into my own space, I was scared to settle in. I was still in survival mode. But then the first night I was like, okay. And so I started to feel better and safe. And then something happened where someone complained about my dog barking. And I panicked again that I was going to lose this place. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to stay here. They're not gonna want me here, blah, 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 blah. And I just went into this like huge survival mode. And again, it was one of those things where there was nothing really I could do, but it was the first place that I hadn't felt like I needed to walk on eggshells. And then I was walking on eggshells again. So again, deep core triggers. And at the time too, I was afraid to share all of this with so many people, and just got to the point where if you weren't in it since the beginning and meeting new people right now felt triggering. And I felt deeply judged and misunderstood, and having to explain to people what my life has been like the past few months, while it has been incredibly transformative and amazing, and so many breakthroughs and so much progress in life has happened, it has also been a choice to remain physically unstable to pursue a dream, which most people see as crazy. Like I can't have any other way to put that. Just crazy. And so I find myself even now having shame and judgment against myself, again, for following my intuition when I'm meeting new people and connecting and, how are you? What have you been up to? Blah, 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 all that stuff. I don't know how to exist anymore because it's like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Who am I? I am now a full-time entrepreneur. I have a contracting gig that I'm working on creating and doing some stuff, which I'm so excited for. And, all my talents and skills and all those things. I am in a safe space. It's a place that I hadn't thought I'd be in, but I'm with the type of people that I want to be around. And, and there's just so much that finally has come together. And yet I am feeling angry and heavy. And I don't realize how much I've been through until I share it like I did just now. The level of, oh my goodness, like I'm actually finding myself start to dissociate a little bit because it feels so heavy. And I actually may re-record this episode because I feel like I just talk details instead of more of the impact, which is what I honestly may do. But to me, my nervous system is still catching up. I'm still in moments in survival mode. And I am someone who's been healing for a decade. I have been discharged from therapy multiple times. I know what I'm doing in this healing thing. Like, I help other people do this, but I am still deeply dysregulated and afraid to take up space. And again, these core wounds and these core triggers that I've been working through, they come back up and they come back hard. And I recently found that the success and the shift in now settling into this new place, having a different routine and lifestyle of seeing coaching clients regularly and creating things and, having different people, plot lines, settings, character. I mean, it's like a whole new, not even, if I can describe it, it's like How I Met Your Mother was what I was always used to. And all of a sudden, I'm living in the reboot of How I Met Your Father, which is the same premise-ish, but so different. And in those spaces, I don't even look in the mirror and recognize myself. Like, I've changed so much. There's so much in my life I've gotten rid of. I have, in a quick amount of time, like, the level up is incredible. And looking back, I'm like, wow, that the universe really did put me where I needed to be. But there is this moment where I'm angry and I'm frustrated. I don't want any of the clothes and I don't like how I look. And I'm looking in the mirror. I don't even recognize myself because so much change has happened so quickly. And that's when I recognized that there is what's called aftercare for a breakthrough. And for me, there have been so many breakthroughs that I haven't fully processed, that haven't fully hit, that now that I'm in this safe space that's my own, things are hitting all at once. And there was one day yesterday where I woke up, just had no self-esteem. I was angry at the world. I was like screaming at the universe for things not happening exactly the way I want them to right now, even though so much has changed and I'm in such a better place. And I'm not around these toxic people anymore, but I'm at the point in my life where things have been shedding to now it feels empty. That emptiness is lonely. And also I'm approaching on my birthday. And that's always a milestone and a look back. And I feel like I have nothing to show for this year because all I've been doing is shedding and deeply looking at things and healing. Yes. But there have been so many deep revelations and losses. I mean, I just looking back, huge pivotal relationships in my life. I am almost 29 years old and I got rid of so much issues from when I was 16. 2 huge relationships in my life who have always been there. One toxic, one more supportive. both gone. They don't fit anymore. They don't fit with this version of me, of my life, of where I'm going, of the person who accepted that level of treatment, and it's hard because both of them, I wish them well. And I have so much love in my heart for both of them. I do. And I believe even the situationship guy, when he says he's changed and he wants this now, I believe that. And I know that my ex did not mean to hurt me in the way he did. And I know that was his stuff projecting onto me. I know that. And I don't hold any ill will towards him at all. I still love him very much. Yet I also know we're not meant to be together. But what's interesting to me is I recognize that a lot of these things that I was undoing through this time came down to these periods in my life when I was in the deepest depths of trauma and relational insecurity. And these patterns that I kept in my life way into my late adulthood because I hadn't healed or deeply healed enough. Because again, I don't believe in it all together healed those relational wounds. And one person, again, was my safe person. It had always been there for me. And I relied on him so much for so many things before I even knew how to rely on myself. And the other person was just always there in this always strong pull and whatever. But I'd always, again, felt deeply connected at a soul level to him. And thought it was going to be him and I at the end of it. And my family, who I thought would eventually we'd find our way back. And I remember always saying, well, at least I have some of my good family, and coming to the realization that that isn't true. And they also have significant trauma and significant issues, and they are also abusive in their own way and unhealthy and not supportive of anything. And so I found this 16-year-old version of me broken and rebuilt and angry it took so long, and just also not knowing where to go from here. Because everything I'd ever known or felt comfort in, or, I learned to set boundaries, and all of these skills that I've been learning in therapy the past couple of years came to this pivotal point these last few months where it was just me and my relationship with myself, and that's all I could rely on. And again, I had people taking care of me, and I was so blessed, and I always had a roof over my head, and I am very privileged in that regard, incredibly privileged in that regard. And even when it comes to survivors and, coaching, I remember that stuck, trapped feeling, and I remember how it feels, and it's not as easy as just do this. You may not have the ability to just go to this therapy, or just, like, everyone has different situations. Everyone has different, it may not be safe to speak out and share your truth. It may not be safe to set boundaries. It may not, you know what I mean? Because you may even get in more abusive situations. Like it's made me reflect on so much. And so I see the privileges of the situations, and everyone is in a different place. And all of this has informed my coaching significantly, because it all brought me back into that place that I hadn't been in mentally in years. I mean, years of this level of deep trauma wounds and unhappiness, and stuck in the environment, just stuck in it, stuck in the trauma, and cannot get through, even with the perspectives that I'd learned, everything. I did not have a way out at multiple times throughout that. And I was having things hit me harder, and I was having those days where I couldn't get out of bed again, and remembering how hard it really is to be in the shit. how hard it really is to have your body shut down and not know who you are when you look in the mirror. The dysfunction of your nervous system when so much is happening and you feel out of control and terrified, and yet also feel like you are adding to the issues. I not only remember it, I relived it. I relived so much of my deepest trauma. It's like I had to revisit all of that pain. I had to relook at every significant relationship to even see things so differently and to see if it fit with who I was and who I wanted to be and my goals and my life and everything. I lost so much. So much. I gained a lot too. There are 6,000 of you here now. At the beginning of this journey, I was stuck at 1,600 for a year. I have regular coaching clients who I'm so excited and fulfilled to work with. And I have gotten so much feedback that it is natural and helpful in a way that has never been helpful to people before. I embrace my spirituality and my intuitive gifts, and I use card readings now. I literally get on live and do card readings. What? I was so afraid of showing that part of me for fear of judgment, for fear of being discredited. Who I am now is so deeply me. And yet it is so different from the person who started at the beginning of this storm. But isn't that but isn't that what the storm is about? The transformation. All of that came because I was ready for it. It came because I was strong enough to handle it, because I had the skills and the self-awareness and the relationship with myself and the ability to know how to get through. And I'm not going to say I'm out of it, because I'm sure there's still going to be stuff. Like I said, just yesterday, I was just angry and mad at the world because my nervous system was in shock after all the changes. And today I woke up better. But I came on needing to say, sometimes in healing, we have to revisit things we thought were done, we thought were good. And maybe to the standard that we were at that time, they were. But as we grow and we heal and we learn, there is more that needs to be resolved there. And I found myself wanting to react in ways that I hadn't seen since I was 16 years old. That rage. I found it when I was in my family's house, and I just had to suppress it, because if I acted on it, it could be very not safe, physically with my brother or emotionally with my mother. That instead of making it this big letter or big thing where I needed to say, I'm cutting you off, no contact, no boundaries with my family, I now found another way to do it, to where I know it's not okay to be in, but I still feel comfortable being able to see my youngest brother, who is my whole world, and maybe drop off the dog occasionally, and just know that a transactional relationship is all that's ever going to be. And I can go months without talking to them and be okay. But also knowing that I don't have a family by blood that I can rely on. And the grief that comes with that. And the many seeing the many moments that I abandoned myself to make other people happy because I didn't see myself as worthy, and I didn't see myself as worth fighting for or taking up space. And I take up space now. I had the courage to know what's right for me and what's not, and to remove myself from people who I really cared about but weren't right for me. Friends, romance, family. And it has led me to this feeling of emptiness. It is this end of a transition where it's barren right before everything starts and that new life starts. And I know it's coming. I do. But it feels heavy and lonely. And my nervous system is in shock. And I literally don't know if this episode made sense. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I might just post it and say, screw it. I just want people to know who are going through healing and transformation and committed to this work, that there are some times where it's going to be slow and it's going to be one step at a time. And then the further along you get in your healing journey and the more you can handle, and sometimes the faster and the deeper it's going to hit, and that rock bottom. But that rock bottom is so transformational. And if you are in that rock bottom place, just know that you are supposed to create that foundation differently than before. And it is sometimes a moment by moment process, a second by second. I remember taking things literally second by second as my nervous system was just in complete shutdown, as I could not get out of bed. Even just showering was hard. Afraid to go downstairs to get a snack because I'd be judged. I wasn't, but that was the narrative in my head. That things that I hadn't seen in myself in forever, that patterns that I'd undone and unwound came back with a vengeance. But I wouldn't change it. And again, at many times, I could have changed it. But that would have been abandoning myself and what I want more than anything in this world and what I know I'm meant to do. And that is be here with you all. That is change the narrative of trauma. That is help professionals and people understand the neuroscience of trauma, all of that, so they can learn to effectively treat it differently. Because it is a nervous system and a brain injury in my book. And that's a controversial thing to say, and I don't care, because that's what it is. That by me showing up in a way that is so authentic to who I am and what I want, because I've gotten to know myself, I was able to go back and unhook all of those things that were stuck on me, that were draining me, that didn't fit, that maybe were stuck to me in moments where there was deep, deep trauma and it trauma bonded. Maybe it served a purpose then, and it was exactly what it needed to be. But it's not anymore. And I know there are a lot of people who I've talked to who have been relocated from their homes, a new life out of nowhere, like recently. I'm not sure what's going on in the world, but just I know a few people's like, you have to move now, you have to move now, you have to move now. And especially when transition is like forced upon us, it can be that much harder. But again, my personal belief is that we will not have the transformation that we're not ready for. And I literally asked for this. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, Taylor, that was so stupid. But just honestly, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. And, but again, I don't regret it. I don't. There's the amount, the roller coaster of emotions and triggers, and there are 10 big, big things that happened, big core wounds, big triggers, or emotion, whatever it is, that I've been holding on to since I was 16 years old. That's just like done with within 3 months. Within 3 months. Everything that has been holding me back from where I need to be is gone. And that's just amazing. But also it makes sense that no matter how strong I am, or anyone who's going through a transformation, no matter how strong you are, no matter how much you've been through, no matter the healing coping mechanisms, whatever it is, there are going to be moments that it just hits. And that does not mean that the transformation was wrong. That does not mean that you did anything incorrectly. That just means that sometimes our nervous system gets overloaded after that breakthrough. It's like that breakthrough in therapy. That big realization hits that's been there your whole life, that you kind of knew it's like under the surface, but therapy just makes you go, and it blows right in front of your face. And there are all of the processing that comes with that, right? And in every time those moments happen, what does your therapist say? Take care of yourself. How are you going to take care of yourself? What are you going to do to soothe your nervous system? What are you going to do today to make sure that, you're not anymore overloaded? It is literally about caring for ourselves like a child. And that is what I had to do. During this time, I had to treat myself like a baby. Did I get enough food? Did I get, did I get enough vitamin D today? Did I eat? Did I get a shower? Do I have to use the restroom? Like littlest things, because I was so disconnected from my body as all of this is happening, that it came down to the basic things. Get up and go for a 2-minute walk. Instead of staying in bed today, go sit on the couch. The smallest of things would change my day completely. And so when my clients work with me, I want them to know that I know the feeling of transformation. It is scary, ungrounding, magical, freaking hard, terrifying. I know I said scary, but really terrifying, lonely, sad, uncomfortable. And yet incredible. And so if you were looking for a guide who has been there, who can help you get in touch with yourself to allow this transformation, and yours will probably go a lot slower than mine, one step at a time, truly. Again, mine just went. Universe is like, oh, you want to be a healer? Here, heal yourself right now. Boom. But I say this because I understand. I was humbly reminded what it is like to be stuck to have those deep triggers, to be in an unsafe environment again, to not know where to go, to not know how to be in control of your body, to have all of this happening at once, all of these deep triggers. I am reminded, it's something I've always known, but I'm so deeply in it that the empathy has returned so much and has allowed me to serve my clients better. It just has. So to anyone who's out there who is going through a rock bottom, just keep going. One small moment at a time. And those moments add up to minutes, and those minutes add up to hours, and those hours add up to days, and those days add up to weeks, and the weeks to months. And then before you know it, you're on the other side of this, a completely changed person who is the most authentic you that you can be. And you're showing up with new plot lines and characters and settings and everything. It's different and scary and hard, and you need to take care of yourself during those transitions. But you may find, if you're anything like me, that it's exactly where you need to be. We have to trust where our brain leads us in healing. We have to trust what comes up, because what comes up is ready to be processed. It doesn't always make logical sense to us. And as a trauma response, or just some people's personality, we want to control the way things happen. One of my biggest lessons is that there is nothing you can control. You have to, at some point, just surrender. And every time that I lost the anxiety and control of this needs to happen, this, every time that I did that, that's when that random phone call came through. That's when this person from the past came back. That's when this opportunity came. That's when this client signed up. Like, they're hard skills to learn. And it sometimes goes against everything our nervous system wants us to do. And that's why the relationship with ourself is so important. So, excuse me. To anyone still listening, first of all, thank you. I just want to remind you that it's okay to be where you are, and that healing is messy. And it's a roller coaster. And when you commit to the work, there's no guarantee where your life is going to be. However, the more you learn about yourself, the more you will be happy about the outcome. Because you learn to stay true to yourself and listen to yourself, even in the most chaotic times. And the affirmation card I pulled yesterday, it couldn't have happened any other way. And there is nothing to regret when I learn from my past. This journey is about learning and growing and overcoming. As humans in general, that's what we do. But as trauma survivors, it's an everyday feat. And there are seasons in our life where it's a lot more at once. There are triggers or traumaversaries or whatever happens, or you ask the universe to remove everything that doesn't serve you. And in those moments, no, you're not actually alone. And I hope that this community and these resources can be of support to you. And if you're someone who does feel drawn to connect with me, to work with me, reach out to me. Because of all the shifts in my life, I'm only taking new clients until March 1st. So I'm probably just going to put this episode out today. Again, I'm not editing this. And it's not exactly how I wanted things to come out. That's what happened. And there's no shame in that. And I am proud of where I am and how I've handled it. And I just want to thank you all for being here. And something about that transformational energy brought so many of me to you. It's the reason this podcast is here. The podcast idea even came about while I was in that transition point. I also, during that time, I even forgot I had a hard conversation with my podcast partner at the time, being like, I need to step away from this. It's not working, which birthed overcoming. This wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for that transformation. I just, so many things, the courses that, I mean, everything. I wouldn't be the same. And this is not saying that you deserve trauma, that you deserve anything bad that happens to you, or, you know, I'm not saying that at all. And I don't want that message to come across. It's saying that the more you learn, the more you grow, the more change is possible in a way that is aligned to you. And sometimes one of our hardest lessons is to just trust the process and surrender and listen to yourself in those moments, because the more we tune into us, the more we understand. And I really did just take an intuitively guided leap and hoped that the universe would provide a net. And it did. Not in the way I wanted. There were many times that I was screaming to the sky. But it did. And I did that for myself. I learned to trust myself. There are many, many lessons and many things, and so much I could continue to say. Just going to leave it at that, that sometimes we get to know ourselves more in the hardest of times. And there's no shame in that. And so as I show up now, as I meet new people, because like I said, it kind of feels empty right now. As I step into these new roles and new jobs, I'm not going to hold shame for what I've been through. I'm going to be proud that I had the courage to follow my intuition, even in the hardest of times. That I learned so much about myself and was true to myself, that I actually designed my life the way I wanted it to be, even in the messiest of places in the middle. And am I at that final landing spot? I don't think so. But am I safe? Yeah. Am I better off than when I started? Surprisingly, yeah. Was there a lot more under the surface than I thought there was? Oh, yeah. That's okay. I just want you all to know that you're not alone. And I remember how heavy it is to be in the middle of it. And I'm sorry that I forgot I fully forgot the engrossment, the full embracing, all encompassing everything. That when people are reaching out to me to send a message, they're just terrified. They're so triggered. They run away, they ghost. They're afraid to even show up, to take up space. I remember. I do. And I have compassion for that. And I'm reminded that with my clients, that we are going one step at a time and taking care of your nervous system needs along the way. And that's all you can do. And even being willing to commit to the work is so hard. And I'm so damn proud of you. I'm proud of us. So yeah. Also, as I wrap this up, I know there have been people asking if when it would be open to have guests on the show again. I still have recordings scheduled into March. I will probably start opening up applications in mid-March is my guess. So keep an eye out for that on the social media stuff. And we'll go from there. But the master class is next weekend on the trauma brain. And it's going to be amazing. It's going to help a lot of people. I'm really excited. Those of you who are signed up already, I can't wait for you. And those who are yet to sign up, if you feel drawn to it, definitely check it out on social media and stuff. I'm able to do this now because of all of that I went through. And the perspective I have is very helpful. Painful, but helpful. And I'm immensely grateful for the revealing of the true support that I do have. Even in those moments where I feel empty, I have so much. They're just physically in other locations right now, which is hard, but I'm not alone. In this community, oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. Amazing. I feel so at peace here. I'm on the internet and there have been trolls and there have been things, and I still feel so comfortable and at peace here. Because I'm doing what I love and I'm living in my purpose, and I'm just grateful for all of it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for accepting me. Told you it was going to be messy. I was not expecting to cry. Was not expecting to share as much of the details, more of the impacts, but here we are. And I hope you give yourself grace on whatever step of the overcoming journey that you're in, and continue to take away things from guests on the podcast sharing about their stories, because there are people like you who have been through it and are going through it and sharing ways they got through. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And I hope by you listening, you think so too. And just thank you.